Manoel, do you need the lights down a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Jane, do you mind?
Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much for the invitation. Maybe a little bit of light because I'm able to.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, especially to Andre, who's been attentive to my work for several years now. And I'm really honored to be here, having crossed the Atlantic and so, but I'm really honored, especially in front of the man himself. Thank God he's staring at you, not at me. Thank God. So I decided to do a kind of crazy thing of compressing here almost 17 years of work in 15 minutes. So I couldn't do it in English like that, so I decided to write a text, and I'll ask you to look at the image, because I'll be here with my other glass struggling to read this thing, okay?
I thought this was from Caravaggio, no?
Sorry?
I thought this was from Caravaggio, no?
Oh yes, it is. I'll tell you about it in a minute, in 15 minutes, maybe 13. So it will be, please look at the image, it will be like a machine gun kind of presentation. So, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my education, for it explains much of what I've been doing as an artist for the last 15 years. I graduated as an electronic engineer, and for 4 years I've worked with industrial automation at a plant in Brazil. During my undergraduate years, I worked at the physics department of my university, and that was an experience that had a great impact on me. I was already 27 when I took up art as a hobby, self-taught at first, and then I took a few specific courses to learn painting techniques, like one in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts. But it was only after I definitely gave up on being an engineer that I dedicated myself full-time to visual arts. And then I went through a period of intense learning after quitting my job and experimenting with several techniques and different languages from the visual arts. I have always been, for example, a big fan of figurative painting. So I copied great masters while at the same time I was trying different things. With time, my work just naturally became more and more abstract, and I started this series. I started studying space in painting, and I started work with this series specifically, where space, from my viewpoint, had to do something with collision of particles. I saw lines as trajectories, as it was impossible to know the velocity of the movement that created them, and that reminded me of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. In that moment, I was already working with acrylic paint on the support that was stretched flat on the floor. My whole body would move over the canvas, and the brush was an extension of my art, like doing like that. And no wrist gesture were involved, as in Picasso-like traditional manner of painting. Then I felt it was time I amplified the scale of my work, so that the spectator could have the sensation of being inside the painting. So I had to move house, and then I started working on 1.4 by 2.4 meters canvas, like this one. And this change in scale requires a technical adaptation. And in the beginning I made a mistake in this particular work here. That turned out to be a valuable find. One day I put too much water over the canvas using a sprayer. I wanted just to get a little wet this layer of paint, just to continue to work over it. But when I did that, this black came out of the mixture. It's separate from the mixture. a mixture that I previously mixed so carefully. I remember what is the solvent for acrylic paint. After that accident, it's been 15 years now of research work. Some review of basic fluid mechanics, very basic. And I took advantage of my knowledge sorry, of the properties of chemical families that form the color pigments, among others, cobalt, cadmium, etc. And of course, lots and lots of trial and error. It goes without saying that still today I keep on learning and have been developing new procedures that keep emerging from specific needs in manipulating the flow of paint in order to create particular special situations in my paintings, and from my more general reflections on time and space. This subject has fascinated me since my college years and turned out to be the main focus of my research work in the visual arts. My artistic process in these last 15 years encompasses making use of natural properties and phenomena as tools to the making of my paintings. Properties such as pigment density, phenomena such as diffusion and gravity. I still work with the canvas stretched flat on the floor, and I don't move it. At specific moments, I apply different mixtures of paint. I use a simple sprayer like those used for indoor planting in order to create water pellicles on the canvas, but only on spots I want to get the paint moving. Very simple, in fact. In other words, I create concentration gradients so that the diffusion force may emerge. Also, choosing the chemical families of the pigments that comprise the mixture of color is of paramount importance, because some pigments must separate very smoothly during diffusion, and also different mixtures must sometimes dislocate together without mixing. Like you have, many examples here and here. In short, this is the initial groundwork of my painting procedure that with time developed into a more complex one. My conceptual interest in this system is that the painting is created by an articulation of actual flows that are carried out on the physical space on the canvas. Mixtures of paints are dislocated and then discontinued when the water has evaporated and the paint is dry. So the perfect place for me to work would be the desert. In this manner, the visual indexes of this dynamic of liquid flows appear as if they were frozen on the canvas, comprising the final work. When we look the world outside, landscape and whatever elements compose it, our visual perception has learned how to read those indexes as movement, and that's why it's difficult for us to look at these results and apprehend them as something static. And that is how these paintings provide the spectator with an experience where time and space are one and non-dissociable. It is also inevitable that one should read these paintings as something connected to nature. Whether it be a cosmic landscape, an aerial photo of a river flowing into the sea, or the image of a cell tissue as seen through a microscope. And this happens not by a mere formal coincidence, but because acting on this genesis of these paintings, there are phenomena such as diffusion and gravity. So there's no traditional metaphor for natural events. Rather, it's nature itself acting, but encouraged and guided by me in a sort of partnership. This process is structured, and therefore the technique can be repeated and expanded. But there's also room for chance in a range of probability that I can't capitalize on. It's my understanding that this means disputing the more traditional notion of authorship that is usually associated with the manual work executed by a trained artist. For my work, authorship means intentionality, given the process is indirect. This is what creates a very particular spatial structure. I should point out that in order to show the complexity of these flows, I developed procedures to better signal visually the internal movement of the masses of paint by injecting specific mixtures of different densities inside other mixtures in movement so that they could move together but without fusing into one color, as in the case of watercolor. When this work with painting was well advanced, I went back to working with photography after the digital cameras were on the market. So I'll take you to a brief explanation of two more recent series that combine camera and computer. Both started some 7 years ago. The first one is called Hubble, after the Space Telescope that has generated the stunning image we are familiar with. And when I saw those images on the internet, I thought about my own painting. I could not fail to see a direct structural connection, and that is why I decided to use them as raw material. These images are digitally edited on Photoshop. First they become black and white images, then the colors are inverted, and what was black turns white and vice versa. The image turns into something strange, more abstract. The luminous dot of a star becomes a black graphic dot on a new white background, so that the viewer may experience a sense of connection between photography and drawing or painting. Subsequently, some of the images are put together and cut and distorted in order to create a new and fictitious space, poetic space, with new and invented between relations between different sections of the cosmos. And the second series is called Dark Matter. Here the starting point is made up of images from Caravaggio's painting, an important reference of mine, due to his radical use of space, including and activating emptiness, the interval between characters, objects and architecture, and so on. His colors are, in this case, are digitally removed, and apart from clothes and drapings, everything else is deleted. The fabrics that encircle figures, objects, and so on gain a connotation of a cosmic fabric. And the poetic title came to me as a reference to the new type of matter that does not interact with light, and its presence is inferred by the gravitational effect it has on visible matter. Making an analogy, my dark matter can be inferred by the curvature of the fabrics. These works and others I have not mentioned today result from my interest in these last 15 years in examining the relation between time and space in art. Although always building bridges with science in various ways from a viewpoint that has been constructed from the time of my former years as university student and engineer. So my interest in time and space relation was firstly revealed in my paintings, and then expanded to my computer-assisted photography. And I see them as one body of work. They articulate with one another and are mutually enriching. And yet they may be viewed as individual works in their own terms. So if you want to see more, I have a website which is comprehensive, and we can discuss more later. Okay? Thank you.
Actually, we should ask Andre why he's